then I'll let you drop the bomb. How rare is that in the world of 67 Shelby GT350? Go ahead and tell them the killer option it has.
Well,
or you want to wait?
No, well, I mean, you all kind of got to do it now. So, not only is it a special car, I mean, it's a GT350, 4-speed, great history. There's the provenance again that we all want in our cars. But what makes this one just absolutely incredible is when we looked up car 1477 after finding the Metzger name in the Shelby World Registry, it mentioned one small detail. The car was equipped with
How are you, Alex?
Doing well.
This is going to be a great day.
Yes, it is.
This is our 200th episode of Coffee Wow. Can you believe that?
Gosh. No, I can't.
Well, guess what I finally got?
What's that?
My own coffee.
No way, the Holy Grail blend.
Look at that. And guess who's on the back?
That's awesome.
Pretty proud of that. Kelsey and Chris Hopkins worked really hard on this. The first one of these is just 500, so there'll be something up in the tagline of the bio on how to get that. Get you some. It tastes fantastic. Room smells great. You want to know what it tastes like?
What does it taste like?
Well, you had some.
Not yet.
Okay, you're right. This is the first batch, actually. Cinnamon, a little hint of vanilla, and some cocoa.
If it wasn't so hot, I'd have some.
It smells fantastic. I like it hot like that. So what are we doing today? Today is Significant Staying Day. 3 of the most significant Mustangs I think that have been found in the last couple of years. 2 of them we just recently solved the mysteries on, thank goodness, because I really want to do this for our 200th episode. We have Mr. Brian Stiles here, one of the top 67 GT350 experts in the world, bar none. He's back there looking at it, and I hope that me, you, and Chris Woodside are correct in what we think it is, because I am really, really confident. The fans out there that have been watching has helped us see these tremendously. We even tracked down the R code to the original owner.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So, 3 significant Mustangs. This is going to be worth watching. Grab your cup of Joe and let's go. How you guys doing?
what it is.
Hey, what's happening? Well, don't tell me if it is what it is or what we think it is, because I have 2 surprises for you guys.
Fair enough.
2 Mustangs I'm confident you haven't seen, and you've seen most of them.
There's a lot of Shelbys, a few Mustangs,
Yeah, well, I mean, these aren't Shelbys, but I think they're significant.
a few Cougars of the car type.
I like Cougars, especially Boss 9 Cougars.
Yes.
Those are crazy rare.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So
tell me what you got.
we have been researching all 3 of these cars, which I know 67 Shelby research is one of your passions. So we had 3 that we were mystery cars.
Okay.
This one we had a decent idea on, but we had to track it all the way back. We refer to this as the Vietnam car. So when you first walk up to it, as you know, when it says T5, it's an export car.
Yep.
All right. So the head of the Navy Defense Contractors, that division in Saigon, brought this car in 1967. Had it built by Ford, and Ford transported it out of Newark. Now, as you know, this is a Metuchen-built car, very close, all the way to Saigon. He drove it for 2 years in Saigon, and then sold it to a Mr. Ron Kane, who was in the 98th Division of the Paratroopers. He drove it in the war zone for 2 years. Check this out. I'm hoping this is something you haven't seen. I think you've seen about everything.
Well, there's always a first time.
And as far as 67s, look at this butt tag. And look at this, the destination stamp. It actually says South Vietnam.
Yes, it does.
How cool is that?
That's pretty cool.
So you know, sometimes, I know you've done a ballistic amount of research with Ford, if you have something significant enough, you get somebody to bend their ear to listen to you. Well, I got a letter from them stating this is in fact one of 5 Mustangs that went to South Vietnam in 1967. The other 4 were coupes. This is the only fastback.
That's cool.
Isn't that neat?
That's cool.
So, and the other neat part of the story that we had to unravel, because we thought this was owned by somebody at the River Rats. Look at this decal. This has been on the car since it was in Vietnam. And Ron Kane, who was in the 98th Division of the Paratroopers, the Army Division, that was one of his friends, ran a PT boat and stuck it on his car.
That's bad.
When he was done with his tour over there, he shipped this car back to the U.S. to Fort Bragg, drove it at Fort Bragg until he got out of the military, moved to Florida, kept driving the car. When he was done with it, he gave it to his daughter, she drove it to high school. And after she was done with it, sold it to one of his friends, and it just went dormant for many, many years. So we tracked this car back all the way to day one.
You know what I like best about this? The story.
Agreed.
The car is telling its story through the research.
So we asked our followers, and this has nothing to do with the value, and I'm not trying to hack the value of this car. Which is cooler, the Vietnam Fastback or the Bullet car? Well, overwhelmingly, they said the Vietnam Fastback.
You know, it's tough to play favorites. You're probably asked all the time, like, what's your favorite?
Yes, it is tough to play.
It's kind of like asking a parent which one of their kids is their favorite. Sadly, they usually have one.
Sure.
But I don't like to answer that. I usually like to answer the question or rephrase it, what's your most cherished one or whatnot. And I'm like, well, whichever one is the most significant. If the building's on fire and I have time to save one,
Which one are you pulling out?
which one's it going to be today, right? And I have to look around the room and I have to figure out which one's most significant. But what you're doing here is you're telling the car's story. And when we all kind of get together, we'll all talk about rarity, right? It's the first thing we kind of gravitate towards. But more than rarity, what matters more is desirability, right? Because it's a male sport. We're visually stimulated. We have to be attracted to the car. Mustang, check. Now we'll talk about rarity. And
T5 Export Vietnam.
And after we talk about rarity, it all comes down to the provenance. That's what you're doing. You're delivering the provenance here. The blockchain, the owner history of this car, from when and why it was sold new, up to how it lived its life. And you get to tell that story. There's not a ton of cars you can tell great stories like that about. So that's what moves me.
When I heard the story on this car and confirmed it, I mean, my hair was standing on end. So big thanks to our Vietnam War vets out there. And I have to apologize to some people out there. I've been buying Mustangs since I was 13 years old, and I have pronounced Metuchen wrong the entire time. It is Metuchen. So thank you for Mr. O'Connor for pointing that out. And the other thing is that there were a lot of guys that came back from Vietnam and went and worked at that plant. You know? So there are a lot of Vietnam era Mustang guys, and I think this is really, really a cool find. So that's why I wanted you guys to see it before we jump into the Shelby.
Yeah, I could probably spend a few hours just digging through this one, and
it's neat. There's some really neat stuff on it. Next one we want to look at, which we did show this on the show.
Okay.
We found this in a barn in Georgia. We'd been in the barn since 1994. It had 3 of its original tires on it. So it is a 428 Cobra Jet car, 68 and a half. Y code 430-1 Detroit locker in the back, 4-speed. Candy apple red, ordered by Bob Taskett, Taskett Ford, and the only one with these options. It's got a couple of neat options, but I'm going to show you. But what I really want you to see is the bottom of the car, because the Metuchen cars were obviously different than San Jose cars.
Well, you know I have a thing for red Mustangs.
I did not. Well, yeah, I know you've got the ultimate red Mustang.
There are more than one.
But you've got the 67 GT500 Shelby convertible, right? The red one.
I do, yes. That's
Nice.
What kind of teleported me into this insanity of knowing too much.
But we need a good light. First thing I want you to do is look up in this wheelhouse and look at these chalk codes up in there.
Yeah, that was
See, that was at 428.
yeah.
And the other thing is, you know how sometimes you can't see the hidden VIN here, or I'm not hidden. Well, the hidden VIN's over here, but the exposed VIN over here.
Well, there's 2 on that side.
Yep. So if you look up,
Stamped
it is just so crisp you can actually read it from down here.
Oh yeah.
Same as the other side. That's how nice this car is.
Never been restored.
No, it's never been restored. It's got 15,900 real miles.
I bet you got the nice pull marks in the top of the aprons when they pulled it out of the stamp.
The other neat thing, when we found this car, we were told that it had a service block in it. We pulled the motor out. It did in fact have a service block, and which I'm going to get that history here in a second. But a number of these motors were actually stamped with cylinder heads and not on the block. Fortunately, this was stamped on cylinder head.
Really?
So the number's there, and it's clean enough that you can see it, even though this is a tough spot. But you can see it up on the back of the head. It's very clear and correct. So I'm not going to say it's numbers matching motor, but some people will say it is because the number was on the head and went on the block.
Well, you know how I define numbers matching. Everyone seems to have a different definition these days.
Correct. So
Depends whether they're buying or selling.
one of the most exciting things was we've had this car for a while, 2 weeks ago, and I was so hoping that something like this would happen. The original owner contacted me, it's still alive.
That's
Sent
awesome.
me pictures of it at the drag strip, which I have over there, which will pop up and show. Pictures of his soon-to-be wife and 3 trophies. He did, in fact, in '69 win the Class Winter Nationals up at Connecticut Dragway. He said, but that's the only time he ever raced it. And it was in the stock glass, and he raced it with polyglass tires. And he ran a 13.1 at 101 miles an hour. He said, and after that, I never raced it again. So this car was not technically a race car, but it won its class in 1969, if you will.
Put a smile on his face.
And Tasca Ford documents, we've got that here. It was a Bob Tasca Ford delivered car. And the way he got it was he was working for the phone company. They'd laid some people off temporarily. So he went and worked at the dealership because his cousin ran finance. And the car came in on the trailer. He said, I want that. And that's how he got this car. It's very rare to see a Bob Tasca, because this was ordered as a race car. But it was a retail car that he was going to put on his showroom floor. It was not spoken for. So the fact that he got it was really pretty lucky. And then we put a Scott Floor exhaust on, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the best there is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely incredible.
Yep.
And other than that, can we lower it down real quick, Alex?
Well, get out from
unless there's
under.
something else you want to look at.
Yep.
So, and I've got the breakdown numbers over there, but there were very few 430 track lock, 4-speed cars, as you know. And then with the options on this one, it's the only candy apple red one. But here's one that I don't think even you as a complete expert have seen very many of. It's got convenience group.
Well, you got exterior decor, GT option group, right?
The convenience light group in the center.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The interior is totally original. We even left the rip and the tear in it. And see, original carpets. 100% original paint.
Well, the carpet's maybe find some paperwork, right?
Did you look for paperwork under the carpet?
So the carpet has been out before, but it was original. So
Okay.
I already took the paperwork.
Now, let me show you some paperwork we do have while you open the hood, Alex. Paperwork, as for us in the business or collectors or even in the entire car world, the story of paperwork is just huge. We had none of this paperwork when we bought this car. And also, I was kind of shooting from the hip that I've had a few of these, walking over and not be able to see that bin and not be able to take this fender off. But Alex and I looked at it like, this car's never been apart. There's just no way that it's not right. So, out of the 428 cars, 1,200 were 4 speeds, 180 were red, 50 with black, 50 GTs, 15 with the 430, and then 1 with the convenience control panel. Kind of neat. But this is what I really like. Tasca Ford, in which Bob was a legend and very instrumental in this actual motor.
Wouldn't have the Cobra Jet without him.
That's right.
Yep.
You heard it from an expert right there. It was a retail car. That was really unusual that it wasn't a car that was already sold. Unless I'm reading it wrong. But this guy worked at the dealership. He did not order this car. He said he came in on the truck and said, I want that car.
Keep in mind that Shelby's, which were special ordered cars, did appear as retail. They were technically retail cars. But they did have a domestic special order associated with them, and I know we're going to talk about that. This does not show a DSO number. So there's the item number, which would be this car's specific sequence if it was on an order, but I don't see a DSO number. So you're right, it doesn't appear to have been special ordered.
In a few more options than most of the Cobra Jet cars were, because most of the people bought these to race.
Yeah.
They have these this many options on one. I think it's fairly unusual.
Put an AM radio.
Yeah, why would you need it if you're drag race?
Yeah.
And of course, we left the period gauges in it because they were in it when we found it. We left the police interceptor intake on it because it was there when we found it. But Alex has completely redone the engine bay. We left everything else original, and it does run. So it's running and driving, and this one's back alive. This is kind of neat. This is the car back in the day. There's the trophies he won. This is actually in '69 in that season. There was his soon-to-be wife. Car we came home from winning the Nationals, and here's one right at Connecticut Dragway.
You can't put a price tag on getting a picture of it at the tree.
It's like, this is the car. I mean, that's really, really cool. So pretty excited about that. There's
That's
2 mysteries solved. Vietnam.
Spectacular.
I've had some of these in the past, and man, they were usually ridden really, really hard, put up really, really wet. And we were fortunate to find this car. Like I said, we pulled out of the barn at 3 of his original tires. Here's his little peak out that he got. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you find any rust in this car?
Zero rust anywhere.
I mean, that's unheard of as well.
Yeah.
2 mysteries definitively solved. How cool is that? Now, we're going to get to the most important one.
I think that's why I'm here.
This is why Brian's here. And this is why Chris is here. So you guys saw me buying this car from Chris. I didn't know Brian. I was really, really thankful that you came into the picture after we chased this down. How much of time of your life did you have in that car before you decided to give up and turn loose and sell it to me?
Well, a lot of these guys here know I had a lot of time in this thing. I mean, I spent almost 3 years researching this car, trying to figure out, every little. We knew it was a big dollar car built back in the day. We didn't really, after looking at it, fairly. The very first week we looked at the car, we knew it was a Shelby. That wasn't what was in question ever. It was which one it was. And I know in the last video we had talked about the reasons why we thought it was a specific car, 1444, which was because basically we thought this car, we knew the car lived in Chicago its entire life, but we thought it was delivered in that area for the whole time our research was going on.
Well, cars didn't typically move very far from when they were originally sold new.
I thought that too.
Then.
No. I thought that too, because the car never moved from that area. I mean, I read what he had, and we looked at the car for a long time. I was like, it almost has to be that car. It's got to be the Jack Loftus Ford car.
When you're chasing cars and you're chasing the blockchain, the history, the ownership on these cars, if you know where it came from, you start drawing concentric circles because they didn't go far. I was just helping a gentleman today that pinged us off the internet. And he's like, I'm looking for my car. And he starts providing the details, the breadcrumbs, right? And it's like, well, it was Night Mist Blue, and it was an automatic. And I was near the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, and he starts going through the details, and I'm like, I need more detail. Don't know where it was sold new. He's like, but I bought it used from, I think it was McCafferty or McFadden, one of the dealers in that area. So he wasn't the new, original buyer, but then he bought it used, and so we're trying to trace down these breadcrumbs. And the more questions that I ask, the closer we got. I'm like, did it have inboard high beams or outboard? He's like, well, I think it had the outboards. Matter of fact, I've got a photo of it. He's sending me a photo of the car. It's got the outboards. He's like, I think the VIN started with 2000 something. I'm like, okay, so it's a 67 GT500 automatic, no air conditioning, no emissions. Shouldn't have it because it's sold in Pennsylvania, most likely, or in that area. And it's a 2000 something VIN, or 2000 sequence number, right? So what's the VIN? 67410, Night Mist Blue 2, black interior A, 02XXX. So now we're down to searching for a car. So now we go into the database, we start searching through them, start looking for cars in that area, and again, you focus it on that area. Like, there was only one sold in Pennsylvania at Pletcher. Don't know if it's the car, but we cast a little bit wider net. We look at the New York, New Jersey area, and we start looking an hour away from home. And you kind of limit your search to that. Again, an hour away from where you know the car has its earliest known history, and that's usually where you're going to find the next piece that you're looking for.
Well, I think the first time that you and I spoke, and we were all involved in the same conversation, I was like, it's got a K-code transmission in it. And Chris is like, yeah, but I was told it was out of a green car. I'm like, and then you're like, well, are you sure? And I'm like, well, let me send you a number of the transmission. And I think you're able to extrapolate, not exactly, because that probably is the right transmission for that car. So why don't we go that route instead of y'all being convinced that it doesn't have the right transmission in it? He's shaking his head.
Well, because with Dennis's viewers, okay, we basically had a name within 1 week. I mean, that's how much, the viewing of his show can add pieces to a puzzle that you've been trying to put together for years. So what had happened was, not to interrupt Dennis, what had happened was within a week we got an email from a gentleman by the name of Kerry Delaski, who said, I know exactly whose car that is. He's like, I used to call him Uncle Mike, but he's like, he was a family friend. I went on vacations with his daughter. We went up, to Michigan. We went fishing, and he bought that car brand new. I said, and immediately, I'm on the phone calling this guy. This is in an email. I'm calling the guy, and I'm saying, are you kidding me? I've been looking at this car for 3 years. I've been trying to get a name. He spits out a name, Michael Metzger. He says, Michael Metzger, he bought the car original owner. He actually bought it from Carroll Shelby himself.
And he sends in this picture, who he's now in his 60s, of the car. He remembered it. And that is, they used to call him Mickey, which was also throwing you off, because we needed the name Metzger.
Needed that.
And
As soon as we gave Brian, because he had that number, he's like, well, hang on a minute, you guys have got a new name. It was like, it's Metzger. And they're like, that narrowed it down real quick, didn't it?
Well, it did, and this is one of the greatest parts of having the Shelby American Automobile Club, is that you've got Ford documentation, you've got Shelby documentation, they've got all the paperwork, they've been tracking these cars, the ownership history, all of the details, and they publish it all in the Shelby American World Registry. So with that name, I did a quick search and looked in the registry, and sure enough, Metzger, MV Metzger, shows up in the registry as the original owner. And do you remember what I told you? I'm like, we were chasing down the wrong trail. This car was not sold new in Chicago area. It was sold new in California at Shelby's own dealership, High Performance Motors.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden,
So what that had done is that blown up like a huge vast of information from.
Quickly, from a dead end to like, we got something.
Yes. Kerry Delansky emailed me a few times. We ended up calling him multiple times, and he explained that he remembers writing in dust on this thing as it sat in what he considered maybe his Uncle Mike's garage. His mother was best friends with Michael Metzger, and it opened up all sorts of information. He sent us some pictures. He also stated that, which we're going to get into next, what happened was it was involved in it was stolen. The car had been stolen and in a wreck, and he ended up putting, what was it, Dennis, $25,000 from that thread we seen?
We've got a really neat piece of information which we're going to divulge right here too. But yes, but you had heard that story that he spent like $25,000 converting this to the coolest straight axle gas on the planet, which to me, $25,000 back then sounds like a lot of money. It is trick, and maybe he did. But however, the car was hit hard enough in the front that he decided, hey, I'm going to make it cool. I'm going to turn lemons into lemonade. I'm going to have the coolest Shelby gasser out there, which to take a Shelby and make a gasser out of it is a pretty bold move already.
well, what I like is that you were really close on this whole story, because the car that we were chasing, right, 1444, it was white, sold in the Chicago area, and we thought it might be the case because it was history unknown. Something happened to the car, it was gone. You caught the rumor of a car being stolen off of Jack Loftus Ford's lot.
Yes.
And trash.
By a young mechanic, which is actually Jack Loftus' son.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yep.
Don't want any liability here. And so we were still following the right scent.
Right.
It just turned out to be the wrong road.
Well, but you have so much information. You were able to narrow it down pretty quick because you have the batch on the cars, and you know how many white cars are in the batch, and then it gave us, well, all of us, here's the sequence of those numbers of what it could be, right? So, but having the Metzger name,
The Metzger name was key.
put the number on it, and then in 2012, Michael Metzger, before he passed away,
Yes.
was it Kerry that found this?
Yeah, Kerry said, wait a minute, he explained the whole story
He
on
explains this-
a chat with some of his Army buddies in 2012.
This is one of his military Facebook pages. It
Yep.
explains the story of the car.
And And as soon as we started reading this chat, it's just amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy basically from beyond the grave is telling his story about how special this car was from day one. Really.
So when Brian figured it out as 1477, and I'll let you drop the bomb. How rare is that in the world of 67 Shelby GT350? Go ahead and tell them the killer option it has.
Well,
Or you want to wait?
no, well, I mean, you all kind of got to do it now. So, not only is it a special car, I mean, it's a GT350, 4-speed, great history. There's the provenance again that we all want in our cars. But what makes this one just absolutely incredible is when we looked up car 1477 after finding the Metzger name in the Shelby World Registry, it mentioned one small detail. The car was equipped with a blower, a Paxton supercharger.
That's not a small detail.
It's one of 37 cars that left the factory that way with a Paxton supercharger. And of those 37, what was the first thing I told you? I'm like, oh my God, it's of the 37, it's the only white one.
And that's what I said. I said, well, how many were white? Just one.
Just one. And it's car 1477. It was a Paxton equipped car. And then of course, when you've got these photos, there's another really cool detail, which is if this car was sold new by Shelby at Shelby's retail dealership, and these photos were taken of it when it was brand new, it shows something that we all say didn't happen because the car has full stripes or top stripes or Le Mans stripes, if you want to call them that. They're shown in the picture. Now,
In 67, at his vacation house.
yes,
Yeah.
right. So that's kind of hard to debate because it's very unlikely that he would have left Shelby, you know, high performance motors and driven down the street and been put top stripes on the car. They're on the car and it looks to be from brand new. Now, the key on that,
Sorry, Ryan.
no, that's okay. The key is going to be if and when we can obtain the Shelby factory paperwork, an important document called the production order. Production order is kind of the birth certificate for the car, at least at Shelby. And there's a checkbox on there. There are 3 options you could put on one of these cars because they're all equipped pretty much the same way. I'm not talking about the Ford options like air conditioning and emissions and transmission type. I'm talking about the Shelby options, which was supposed to be, originally planned, top stripes, the wheel type, whether it's a standard steel wheel, the Kelsey Hayes Mag Stars, or the Shelby aluminum 10 spokes, and whether or not the car may have gotten an AM radio installed. Those are the 3 options that these cars would have been fitted with or changed at Shelby prior to delivery to the dealer and or first owner. That document, if it has a circled X in that stripes box, would just be absolutely mind-blowing to someone like me who collects paperwork and has never seen any other car with an X in that box.
Well, here's the reason why I think it still really holds water. So Mike Metzger goes on to tell the story. I don't remember where he worked, but anyways, where he worked, he was in the lunchroom and said, "Hey, I just got back from I think Jeff Office Ford, and I went in and said I want to order a high performance GT350, and they said you'll never get it." And the guy sitting next to him goes, "You realize that our boss is personal friends with Carol Shelby, right?" He goes, "No, I didn't know that." He goes, "Go up there and tell him what you want. I think he'll help you." He went up there and told his boss what he wanted. He goes, I want a Paxton supercharged 4-speed GT350. His boss right there picked up the phone and called Carol Shelby. Said, "I got a good young man sitting here. He can afford it."
He said,
Bill-
make a list of your options.
Yeah, make a list of your options.
I'll get you what. Let's see what we can do.
Like,
Make a list.
get you what you want. And he wanted a white, blue stripe, 4-speed supercharged car.
Yep.
A couple of months later, the story goes, again, this is told by Mike Metzger. The story goes that he came back down to the lunchroom one day, his boss did, and threw a plane ticket down and said, "Your car's ready." So this whole time he thought his boss was pulling his leg. He flies out there and none other than Carol Shelby opens the door, shows him the car, and gives him the keys. And this was on his ride home.
And he stated that right in his chat.
I mean, how cool is that for a story?
I don't think it gets much better. That's
So I think Carol's just like, sure, you know, you're a friend of mine. That's what you want. Your guy's a good guy. Will do it. And give me a couple months. And sure enough, a couple months later, the boss came down, gave him a ticket, and Carol Shelby delivered it to him himself. So I think it really is a special car.
absolutely amazing. If I understand the rest of the story, He gets it home, driving it for some period of time. We believe he takes it in for service to Jack Loftus Ford.
Yep.
And I'll let you take it from there.
Kerry said that he remembers Mike taking in for service and something happening at the dealership where he was getting serviced. That the car had been stolen from the dealership, and then he says that he that was the last of the information that he had from Mike himself. But the car had been stolen, and Mike in his blog with his buddies was saying that, to make a long story short, car was stolen. He turned it into a C-gas drag car when he got the car back, and put over $20,000 into this car in 1968. The car had been stolen within basically what Gary said, it's been stolen really recently after the car was purchased. So it kind of made everything start to fit in here. I mean, everybody was asking in the last videos, what class it could have run, FFX, whatever. It was actually, he states right in his thing, from Michael Metzger himself, who's the original owner of the car, he states that he turned it into a C-gas drag car. And we are still researching. He also said he watched it run at Union Grove Dragway in 1969. He said he made special note because he was around 9 years old and was watching it with his dad and his mom. And what he had stated was that he remembers the announcer saying, "Oh, wouldn't you believe it's a 1967 Shelby, and the whole doors forward are all primered red oxide with red oxide paint." He said he remembers that to this day, that the announcer had mentioned that. And so what we are still looking for and searching for is some photos of it at Union Grove, Great Lakes Dragway, right outside of, it's in Union Grove, Wisconsin, to add the last finishing pieces to this puzzle that has just been so crazy, with the story behind this whole entire car. It just kind of finishes everything out to where it was a very, super rare car to start with, ultra rare story behind meeting Carroll Shelby himself,
Yeah, absolutely.
getting hand delivered and a handshake and a tour of the plant.
Well, he's the kind of guy that would do that. I mean, I'm from Dallas, and Carroll was from here, so I've been honored to meet him over the years and sit down and eat dinner with him. And I know his son Aaron Shelby, just incredibly nice family. We actually he had 4 Jeep Wranglers, and we have the third one now, the third of the 4. So I've chased his cars over time, but he was the kind of guy that would do that. I just think it's really cool. But let's lower this thing down and then listen to Brian on how he got further along in narrowing it down to what it was, because he's got Shelby Research Group, which you guys have collected documents. You guys have got an inordinate amount of time into it, which is really cool, because Brian has got all this stuff. I don't know if you've got it in a digital format of how you research it, but you're able to go back and forth and extrapolate certain things that I don't think anybody else could possibly do. But show us how, once we had the name Metzger and we had the transmission number, how you were able to pull this together.
I wish I could take more credit for that part of it, but once we got the name and found it in the registry, it was pretty much all wrapped up with a bow on it. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot more that I could do other than a little bit of more verification. When you sent me the pictures of the for example, as we go through this, the Ford VIN that's on the transmission in this car, I was able to cross-reference that with the Shelby VIN and look at the original orders, and I can safely say that I feel that Ford VIN falls into the original order for this car.
But you were already very close before we gave you the Metzger name, right? You had show how far you had narrowed it down.
Well,
so explain how these are ordered in groups. So it's crazy interesting.
Yeah. So some of the paperwork I brought you here. The first paperwork I'm going to show you is basically the microfilm that contains all of the 67 Shelbys ordered. The 3,225 cars received serial numbers. Well, technically, one of them wasn't on the orders. 3,224 were ordered by domestic special order. One car, the lime gold advertising car, actually was not on a special order. It was a Ford promotional car that they used for the proof of concept and then for advertising duty.
You're talking about the one that's in the container back there?
Yeah, that one. Okay. I've been searching for that one.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. Got to have another episode, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the 2 pages domestic special order 2571, which ordered 280 cars, which would be configured the same way, GT350 4-speed base package, no emissions, no air conditioning, 280 units, and car 1477 would be one of the 56 white painted cars from this order. And it even shows the item numbers here. So this car would fall into the item numbers. The way that worked is the order was placed by the dealership. In this case, Ford treated Shelby as a dealer. Placed the order, and when this was keyed into the computer system, they generated punch cards. All right, the car was known by its item number, which would be a combination of the order number plus its item number. And when they fed them the stack of punch cards from this order, 280 of them, into the computer system, scanned them in, that's when serial numbers were applied. All right, so there is a little bit of uniformity to all of that. The second,
but you're still got 56 cars, and that could take a while to figure that out.
Well, absolutely. But to that end, you have a Ford serial number.
Right.
And we now know the Shelby number, and we've got a Ford number, which we don't know whether it's correct or not, right? Transmission could have been swapped out. We don't really know. But we take a guess. So you got a Shelby number and a Ford serial number, and this is when you go ahead and you go to the custodian of the Ford archives, the Ford records, Kevin Marty, and you say, I would like to order a copy of the Ford record for this car. Here is the Shelby VIN and the Ford VIN, which, by the way, they do very specifically to make sure that there's no one building fake cars. They want to see you know both those numbers. And so you went ahead and ordered a Marty report.
Correct. I just happen to have it.
I'll take it out of here just so
That's fine, yeah, because you can't see it. That's cool.
All right. So you went ahead and obtained a Marty report, which the fact that you have this confirms that those two numbers match up. The Shelby sequence number and the Ford VIN that you found on the transmission.
So just to be clear,
yes,
if you try fishing, you're not going to win this game.
you will be shut down pretty quickly.
You've got to turn in the right two numbers, and you got one shot at it. It's kind of like the halftime at a basketball game. You're going to win a free Jeep. You got one shot at it. So, but we were also very, very confident, Chris and I were, that quite a bit of the paint on the rear section of this car is white. It's original. So for those two, I'm like, here's my one shot. There we go.
Well, the 1477, once we looked that up in the registry, that matched right up. White, GT350, 4-speed. I mean, it was all there.
And we had all that stuff from Metzger, and Kerry submitted, his family involved. We're like, there's just no way it's not this car. It just has to be this car.
Matter of fact, I think that's still the original radiator in the car, is it not?
It is.
So it's got a couple of component parts that are still, even though the car has been highly altered, which we'll talk about that in a minute, but go ahead with the Marty report.
I was just going to say, when I look at this car and we have this conversation, wouldn't it have been great to find a picture of the car when it was wrecked so that we could see how much of it was missing or compacted?
I have a feeling it was hit pretty hard for him to do that, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it just got going the side. For the radiator to survive, it's pretty weird.
Put the accelerator down, load up the carb, spool up the blower, you ain't hitting the brakes at that point. So, anyway, the other documents that I brought you here would be the what we call the SVO, the Special Vehicle Order and Part Specifications. This is the engineering document that would go with this car's order. This document would oftentimes be found under the carpet in a car that left the San Jose plant destined to be a Shelby. And it talks about all of the little things that were deleted off the car or added to the car from a base Mustang build to turn it into a Shelby.
And all 67s were San Jose cars, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. All of them built in San Jose plant. The things like delete the letters, F-O-R-D off the sheet metal. Because remember, in '67, this was the big year for Shelby. Carroll was really excited because '66 looked like a great year, at least on paper. Part of that was almost half the cars were Hertz deals.
Hertz rental cars.
Yeah.
We know those well, don't we, Alex?
Yeah. But that did make the chart look really good.
Sure.
From a $310,000 loss in '65 to a $310,000 gain in '66. Things looked really good, which is why the 67 was such a drastic change. It was no longer going to be a Mustang with Shelby parts. It was going to be Shelby's own car. All of the complex fiberglass work that drastically changed the way the car was going to look from the Mustang on which it was based.
But however, if it wasn't based on the Mustang, we would have never figured that out.
Exactly.
Never.
Exactly. So this document right here, the SVO, talks about all of the little things that were changed from a base Mustang build to create a Shelby. So I brought you a copy of that document as well. I believe.
You let me keep these?
Yeah, of course I will.
Outstanding. I love paperwork.
And then I did generate for you here what we call a Rarity Report. Now this Rarity Report, I'll warn you ahead of time, does not take into account the Paxton uniqueness of this car, but they're so unique that we just hadn't built it into the report yet.
Okay.
But this just shows you, if it wasn't a Paxton car, when we factor in all of the things that make it unique, even as a Shelby, you know, you talked about how many GT350s were there? There were 1,175 of them. How many of those were 4-speed? 821. How many were Wimbledon white? 125 of those. How many had black interiors? All but one.
What did it have?
No, it was either black or parchment.
Parchment.
Yep. So there was one that was parchment of this set. And obviously no air conditioning, no emissions, drops it down to 105 units. And it had steel wheels from the factory. The 15-inch Kelsey Hayes Ford steel wheels with the full wheel covers. Sometimes people call them hubcaps. But that's the way it says that this car was configured. Now where's that photo of the car? Can we see the wheels on it when he got it brand new? What is believed about the car being that it left the factory with the
Stripes.
well,
For one.
from the photograph, yes.
Okay.
But the known information on the car said that it was a 15-inch steel wheel car. But this photo shows 15-inch aluminum 10-spoke Shelby wheels on the car. This is why it is so important that we get that paperwork, the Shelby paperwork on the car. Number one, it'll show us how the car arrived, it'll show us how it's believed to have left, and then we've got a photo that we hope matches up with it, but if it doesn't,
So it could be a one-off car for 3 reasons.
absolutely.
1, because it's a white Paxton car. 2, because it's got stripes. And 3, because it had alloys.
Well, one of one's one of one, right? The Paxton's
Agreed.
going to make it one of one. But if
Pretty
it had
very
no
rare
if it had
options.
no wheels on it,
Yeah.
one of one, you know? I get it. So, again, look forward to seeing that paperwork. Hopefully we can obtain that from the SAC Club.
But that'll be the next question asked. We'll see what happens. I have not sent it to him yet. So next question.
Yeah.
Let's lower this thing down. And this is where I'm really, really torn. When I walk in my building, I took Chris over there and showed him some of my cars that I really love. Let's just say, look at it. When I walk in, this car aesthetically just ticks every box for me. I love the way it looks. I mean, it's cooler than a Hot Wheel. However, being as rare as it is, does this car need to go back the way it left the factory?
So it's one of those,
Anything can be restored.
well, it's one of those tough questions. You know, there's a lot of eye candy out there. There's a lot of restored Shelbys, a lot of restored cars in general, right? We obviously get really excited when we find the survivor. It tells
like-
the story.
To me, I would rather have this
Yeah.
than the best gold national award winning Cobra Jet 16.5. But that's just me, because I know exactly what that car is.
I was gonna say, how's the saying go? It's only original ones.
Right.
Right. I wouldn't call this original, but I think Tina would probably be more the correct.
But I mean, this is how the car was in '69. Even though it's a 60s. Actually, this is how the car was in '68 and '69. And then one of the big reasons this car, and we'll just spend 1 or 2 minutes on this, but the reason this car faded away really quick, so the rules all changed.
Mm-hmm.
So the car there was no classic and running. But anyway, and then it ended up with Rudy, who was a pretty famous owner of some incredibly significant cars, which also always led me to believe when I was buying the car from Chris, because I knew some of the cars that came out of Rudy's collection, they were serious muscle. Some of the most expensive muscle cars, even to this day, is where this car sat. And that guy knew his stuff. But anyway, back to the question I posed, do we leave it like that?
What was the first thing we talked about? Car telling a story. If this car was telling a story, what story do you want it to tell? Do you want it to tell the story of, hey, I'm a pretty white, brand new car that it's all polished up and looks like every other car? Or do you want a car that tells a story of what a crazy life I lived?
This is a crazy one. Just from the beginning of everything that Carroll Shelby did for this young guy to build him a special car, to the fact that it got stolen and wrecked, but he still wanted to keep the car. He was a drag racer, so he turned in his Shelby, which in itself was very difficult to get.
Well, he didn't want to get rid of it. That's
No,
kind of the cool
he did
part.
not want to get rid of it.
He spent all that money on a car. A terrible experience happened. Allegedly gets stolen from the dealership and crashed, his pride and joy. And then he spends 3 times more money
Then he paid for the car.
turning it into this.
Because he wanted, I mean, showing up with this car at 68, 69 at the drag strip, you were like, wow, look at this. I mean, it just, the stance is cool, and just the way it's built is cool. And Chris knows a little bit about the guy that did all the alterations on the car. The white was done. If you just hit on that real quick, and it really was top notch back in the day.
Well, and you asked in the last video if this was a Holman Moody front clip, and it very well may be a Holman Moody front clip, but what I believe is because in that Chicago area, the guy building those cars was from a company that he owned called Fiberglass Limited, and they are the ones that produce these fiberglass nose clips. And I mean, with the little like what Brian's talking about, the little breadcrumbs. I mean, this guy also built the Super Mustang. His name was Ron Pellegrini. He owned Fiberglass Limited, and he also, the way the tail panel had been set up in the back, he had run Buick, I think it's like 64 Buick tail lights to run at the drag strip, which we had talked about previously. And who did that? Well, Ron Pellegrini was also a big Buick guy, you know. So I mean, so those little odds and end things, and us having like me and Ryan had talked to Arnie the farmer, like we had mentioned last time, that he said, man, that thing is set up with the reverse Corvair steering box, just like my GTO drag cars were set up by Ron back in the day, and that's just crazy to find all these little bits
of information. If you were trying to recreate a Ron Pellegrini car right now, you would be spending huge money.
Sure.
And you'd have to have something like this to go off of. So that in itself makes it, I mean, this car is special for so many ways, but I think you've answered my question. I think it stays like that.
It tells one heck of a story.
It does.
You know.
But how many of the Paxton supercharged cars are known?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that answer.
Half?
I would think at least half. Yeah.
But as far as a 67 GT350 goes, that's a holy grail one, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a car that tells a story. You know, how many people can tell this story that we're all sitting here discussing today? A lot of people tell a story about how pretty their car is and how much money they spent on restoration, and that's great. I believe in preservation and being the right caretaker for these cars, but this tells one hell of a story. I mean, the delivery, the accident, the second chapter in its life after that,
And actually figuring out what it is.
Well,
I mean, I'll tell you what, I thank you guys for your time. These guys have spent a tremendous amount of time on this. We've shortened this down to less than an hour. But the amount of time that's invested in the Vietnam car, the R code in this car, I think it's worth it. I think these are 3 significant Mustangs, some of the better finds in the last couple of years.
Oh, hell yeah.
They're always coming out of the woodwork, but to be able to have these 3 here, and I'm honored that you're here. Brian Sowles from Shelby Research, Mr. Chris Woodside, who spent a ton of time on this car. There you have it. That's episode 200. So, are you guys hungry?
always.
All right. Well, we tend to eat an inordinate amount of food. So, let's go eat. All right, so for appetizers for the table, we're gonna do 2 Nikki specials, one with jalapenos, one without, and we're gonna do the chicken Alfredo pizza that everybody likes. Y'all want 1 or 2 of those? I think one's enough, that's 3 pizzas. And then fried calamari for sure, stuffed mushrooms, and we'll start off with that. All right.
So the reason
What do we got? Stuffed mushrooms, outstanding. I knew that. I've been here 9,000 times.
The reason we sent the car to Jason to redo a second too, Mustang candy out
All right, this is a chicken Alfredo pizza with spinach.
Do y'all want plates too? Maybe plates?
Plates would be fantastic. So this is one of the pizzas they're famous for, but the most famous one is the Nicky's Italian with jalapenos. It's on its way. I'm gonna give these to the guests first.
I found one. It's Pueblo,
So
Colorado.
Jed Siddle sitting here thinks he can beat this pizza with his uni. Don't think he can. We're gonna find out.
It still looks like
I flapped a little bit on that. Alfredo or the Nicky Special or both? Nicky Special, this is the bomb with jalapenos.
Oh, that's there you go.
Look how fresh all that stuff is. And yes, I washed my hands twice. Woo, it's hot.
Got a picture.
You ready, Jed?
Out of the uni.
Let me have your plate. Look at that slice of pie. Woo! This is definitely gonna be best bite right here. But I'm gonna have to wait a minute, it's too hot. Or you have to wait for the chicken aristocrat. You ready, Con Man? Anybody else ready? Jalapenos. It's hot. So Chris, is that not some fantastic pizza?
It is very, very.
Here in Murphy, Texas. Nicky Special with jalapenos.
Yeah,
Everything is
she did
perfectly
well.
fresh. I took the end off it already, but best bite has got to be all the jalapenos. I need a tiny bit more onion. Wow, what a great day to be alive, and what a great meal with some great people at Nicky's Italian in Murphy, Texas. I hope you guys enjoyed our significant stangs. I've enjoyed having them around. Uncovering the history and the mystery of these cars has absolutely been incredible. And to have Mr. Brian Stiles here is an honor. Chris Woodside spent an incredible amount of time on the Shelby GT350. Alex did an amazing job on the 68.5 R code. Most of all, thank you to the followers. Our 200th episode, wow, what a huge achievement. Kelsey Collins has worked tirelessly on this, as has Zach Gorgas and Alex Bowling. So a big thanks to my staff. Again, a huge thank you to the followers out there. So please keep liking, tagging, and following, and most of all, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on the road to 400 episodes. We're gonna do it as fast as we can. It's one a week, so you do the math. And again, we have a TikTok. See you next week.